Number 5 is Casa Grande. Around 1350 AD, the Casa Grande, or the Great House, and its surrounding compounds were constructed, representing one of North America's largest prehistoric structures. Despite its grandeur, the purpose of the site still remains a mystery. Evidence uncovered by archaeologists indicates that the ancestral Sonoran desert people responsible for the Casa Grande also pioneered wide-scale irrigation farming and established extensive trade connections lasting until approximately 1450. The term Hohokam is used by archaeologists to describe sites with earthen buildings, red on buff pottery, and extensive canals. However, this term does not refer to a specific tribe or people. The misunderstanding has caused confusion with the Odhodam, the Hopi, and Zuni people as Hohokam, and is not present in any of their languages. The Casa Grande fell out of use around 1450 AD, leaving behind no written records. The first historical accounts come from Padre Francisco Kino's journal entries during the 1694 visit. Lieutenant Colonel Juan Batista de Anza in his expedition in 1775, and Brigadier General Stephen Watts Kearny visit in 1846 provide additional insights. Public interest grew during the 1860s and 1880s due to improved transportation, leading to concerns about preserving and preservation from souvenir hunting and vandalism. Still had to deal with that back then like we do now. Anthropologist Adolf Bandelier, the Hemingway Southwestern Archaeological Expedition, and influential figures like Senator George F. Hoare and Benjamin Harrison played crucial roles in drawing attention to the deteriorating Casa Grande. In 1892, President Harrison established the Casa Grande ruins as the first prehistoric and cultural reserve in the United States. The General Land Office took charge in 1901, appointing Frank Pinkley as one of the first on-site custodians. Between 1906 and 1908, Jesse Fuchs of the Bureau of Ethnology conducted significant excavations and repairs. Casa Grande ruins became a national monument in 1918, managed by the National Park Service. Under President Woodrow Wilson, several construction projects occurred in the 1930s, including a visitor center, a steel-sheltered roof over Casa Grande, and adobe buildings by Civilian Conservation Corps. These structures listed on the National Register of Historical Places have maintained the site's appearance since the 1940s. The National Park Service continues its mission to protect and serve, and it oversees ongoing research, ruin repairs, interpretive programs, and visitor center remodeling, ensuring a meaningful experience for present and future generals at the Casa Grande Ruins National Monument. One thing to note about Casa Grande is you cannot camp there. So, and a lot of the other ones we're talking about today, you can camp on site, but this one you cannot. So if you go to visit, you have to stay outside and then you travel inward. Number 4 is the famous Taos Pueblo. In the heart of the Taos Valley, where the Rio Grande River embraces a small branch, a living tale actually unfolds. It's a story that began in ancient times around 900 AD, when the echoes of ancestral tribes settled in the region, creating the foundation for what would become the remarkable Taos Pueblo. In the early chapters of this narrative, the Pueblo stood as a central hub, where trade winds whispered through the Rio Grande, weaving connections between native tribes and plains tribes to the northeast. Each fall, a trade fair painted the Pueblo with vibrant stories of cultural exchange, leaving a mark on the first Spaniards who encountered this ancient land in 1540. The tale took a turn when Fray Francisco de Zamora arrived in 1598, bringing with him the influence of Spanish architecture and Catholic traditions. A church, San Geronimo de Taos, rose and became a symbol of both unity and resistance. As cultural tensions grew in the 1600s, the Pueblo faced destruction, but they rose from its ruins. As the 18th century unfolded, so did a unique chapter of cooperation between the native people and the Spanish. San Geronimo de Taos stood resilient against the backdrop of changing times, reflecting the fusion of two worlds. In 1847, the story took a dramatic turn when the New Mexico became U.S. territory. A revolt erupted in Taos Pueblo against the American tide, leading to a new mission church, a symbol of both defiance and adaptation. We're going to dive way deeper into that in a different story that revolves Kit Carson, but it was a very violent uprising. But for time's sake and for this video, we're just touching base on that something did happen. Anyway, moving on. As the 20th century dawned, the railroad ushered in modern tech, altering the Pueblo traditional rhythms. Yet within the Pueblo's walls, the legacy endured, marked by stacked adobe houses and yearly ceremonies renewing ancient plaster. Today, Taos Pueblo stands as a living testament, captivating visitors with its rich narrative. The sun-dried bricks whisper tales of resistance, adaptation, and cultural resilience. And in the quiet embrace of its kivas and shadows of its defensive walls, the ancient Pueblo invites all to wander through the chapters of history where past and present dance together, creating a story that unfolds on every visitor's step. So, as someone who has visited Taos Pueblo, you are welcome to visit the town. There is a multi-week ceremony in the spring. You cannot go, but they do invite visitors. You do not go in their houses unless invited to. They sell wares there. You can visit the church. There's a town outside of Taos Pueblo that's also beautiful. But one thing of note, on the main building, there's a set of mountains behind it, and it's constructed in a way, from what I've been told and what I've read, that the building is supposed to mimic the mountain ridge line behind them, so it kind of mimics it. So it's a multi-story building that they built years and years ago, that's still standing today, and you can go see it. I'm gonna put a picture of it up, but it's an incredible place. Number 3 is Bandelier National Monument. In the enchanting landscapes near Los Alamos, New Mexico, a sprawling tale of ancestral Puebloans unfolds at Bandelier National Monument. This 33,677-acre sanctuary cradles the ancient homes and territories of people whose echoes resonate from the 12th to 16th centuries. As the narrative begins, sheer canyon walls guard secrets, cave dwellings and petroglyphs etched into the very fabric of the monument. Toyoni and Sakawi are the two large villages echo the whispers of an era when the ancestral Pueblo people, known as the Anasazi, shaped their lives from 1150 to 1550, roughly. In the quiet side of the Frijoles Canyon, the Puebloans constructed homes from volcanic tuff, which is a soft material that shapes their dwellings. A surge in population and construction activity after 1300 AD marked the flourishing of Bandelier. Axes crafted from hard basalt rock sourced nearby shaped the tough blocks, and the ponderosa pine provided sturdy vigas for their roofs. These resourceful people deeply connected to the lands, cultivating corn, beans, and squash in Mesa-top fields, weaving their sustenance with native plants and meats from the abundant wildlife. Turkeys with feathers and meat to offer, and yucca plants yielding root for soap and shampoo were integral ways of life. By 1540, change was on the horizon. Francisco Vasquez de Coronado and his expedition arrived, witnessing a people already leaving the canyon for new homes along the Rio Grande. Over 400 years had passed, and the land could no longer sustain them. Compounded by a severe drought, oral traditions guide us to the Pueblo and the San Ildefonso Pueblo and the Cocoche Pueblo, direct descendants of those who once called Frijoles Canyon home. Silent ruins awaited discovery until Adolphe Bandelier, a Swiss-American historian, embarked on exploration in the 1880s. In the late 19th century, they saw proposals for protection, or a bill for a Cliff Cities National Park in the early 1900s, but it faltered. Renewed archaeological work from 1909 to 1912 sparked its interest again, leading to the establishment of Bandelier National Monument in 1916, honoring Adolphe Bandelier. Today, the monument, like a time capsule, preserves the remnants of prehistoric Indian civilization. The main loop trail beckons visitors into the heart of the living museum, where archaeological sites reveal tales of cave dwelling, masonry, and unique talus houses blending both worlds. The Pueblo Revival-style headquarters building stands as a testament to the Civilian Conservation Corps craftsmen in the 1930s, welcoming visitors with artifacts and insights into prehistoric modern Pueblo Indians. Hiking the trail, one encounters the Big Kiva, an underground structure steeped in ceremony importance. The journey continues to the Longhouse and the reconstructed Talus House, each whispering tales from communal living and archaeological ingenuity. Venturing further, the Alcove House awaits perched 140 feet above the canyon, accessible by wooden ladders and stone stairs. This former home of 25 ancestral Pueblo people invites imagination to climb these heights, carrying the supplies needed for daily life. Bandelier National Monument is a tale that's told by nature and nurtured by time. It unfolds 10 minutes south of Los Alamos, and the landscape holds the secrets of ancient people and invites modern explorers to walk its trail and glimpse into a bygone era. Number 2 is Chaco Canyon National Historic Park. It was difficult to pick between what I have at number 1 and Chaco Canyon. Chaco Canyon is absolutely incredible. It proves that ancient America does have history. A lot of people like to study Rome and like to study ancient England because of the rich history. There's rich history here. The cultures that lived here did not use written language to pass down their traditions. They use oral language. They speak about it to themselves. So we have to discover a lot more, but this site proves that there is substantial population that lived in one area for religious reasons. It's standing today. You can go see it today. And it just solidifies that we have more history in America, not all of our country, but in America, we have more history to uncover. And that's super exciting as a history fan and somebody who runs this channel, that there's still more to do. So that's my little soapbox for Chaco Canyon. I think it is absolutely incredible. It is a must-see. Out of all these are must-sees. Chaco Canyon is a must-see if you want to dive into traditional native buildings, traditional native culture. You have to see it. Okay, moving on. In the heart of northwestern New Mexico, where the Chaco wash carves a relatively inaccessible valley, lies the Chaco Culture National Historic Park, a testament to America's rich culture and historic legacy. This remote and isolated park, positioned between Albuquerque and Farmington, unfolds a captivating narrative through the distinctive architecture, ancient roads, and numerous ruins. Chaco Canyon, once a vibrant center of ancestral Puebloan culture from 850 to 1250 AD, emerges as the focal point of this cultural saga. Stretching its influence across the Four Corners area, the Four Corners where the states meet, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah, kind of in that area. Chaco culture, by 1000 AD, established a spiritual, political, and economic hub. An estimated 5,000 people inhabited approximately 75 scattered settlements through the canyon, which created flourishing civilizations. The ancient Puebloans, skilled architects and engineers, left a mark on the landscape. Amidst the public and ceremonial buildings, a network of roads, ramps, dams, and mounds unfolded, a testament to the meticulous planning and construction. The distinctive architecture, blending designs, astronomical alignments, geometry, and landscaping, transformed Chaco Canyon into an ancient urban center, resonating through time. Archaeological evidence traces the ancient Puebloans' presence in the region as early as 1200 BC. Their evolution from nomadic hunters and gatherers to settlers in caves and pit houses marked the basket maker era around 1700 AD, and the transition to agriculture began, bringing forth these small masonry structures and the stages of grand pueblos that would define the Southwest. Pueblo Bonito is a colossal D-shaped pueblo, symbolizes the pinnacle of Chacoan architecture. Rising nearly 5 stories and encompassing approximately 650 rooms surrounding a central plaza, it stood as a vibrant hub from the mid-800s to the 1200s. Over time, other monumental structures like Chetro Celt, Univita, Penasco Blanca, Hongo Pavi, and Kinbanola enriched the canyon's tapestry. As the Chacoans quarried sandstone blocks and transported timber from great distances, 15 major complexes emerged, dominating North America's skyline until the 19th century. These buildings, intricately aligned with solar and lunar cycles, bear witness to generations of astronomical observations and centuries of coordinated construction. However, in the 12th and 13th centuries, we see a stark shift. Again, a prolonged drought starting in about 1130 initiated the decline of Chaco Canyon's prosperity. Despite sophisticated dam and irrigation systems, the dry climate and the overtaxed fields led to famine. The once thriving civilization dispersed, seeking refuge near the Little Colorado River and, again, the Rio Grande. Factors like religious upheaval, internal conflicts, and warfare further contributed to the abandonment. By the 1300s, the once bustling village lay deserted, kivas ceremonially burned, and possessions actually left behind. The legacy of Chaco Canyon persists in its descendants, members of 20 Indian tribes in New Mexico and Arizona. Modern Pueblo Indians, Hopi, and Navajo communities maintain their connections with this sacred land. Over centuries, Chaco Canyon witnessed the ebb and flow of inhabitants. By the 1600s, the Navajo people primarily occupied the canyon, fostering a cultural exchange with the Pueblo people. Spanish explorers, artists, and photographers documented Chacoan site in the 18th and 19th century, paving the way for subsequent expeditions and archaeological endeavors. Chaco Canyon National Monument, as we know it today, was established by Theodore Roosevelt in 1907 and paved the way for preservation efforts and research. The park expanded in 1980, and ongoing initiatives protect Chacoan sites on adjacent lands, recognizing their sacred significance. Today, Chaco Canyon National Historic Park stands as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, inviting visitors to explore its rich tapestry. The park offers guided tours, hiking, biking, trails, camping facilities, and night sky programs, ensuring the preservation of this unparalleled testament to ancestral Puebloan civilization. As Chaco Canyon weaves together the threads of time, it remains a sacred and revered chapter in American cultural and historical narrative. And number one is the famous, the infamous, the absolute must-see of all these is Mesa Verde. Perched high above the dramatic landscapes of southwestern Colorado, Mesa Verde, translating to green table in Spanish, stands as a captivating window into the lives of ancient Puebloan people. For over 700 years, from 600 AD to 1300 AD, the vast national park, spanning 52,073 acres, has safeguarded its legacy of these ancient inhabitants with over 600 cliff dwellings and 4,000 archaeological sites nestled within its borders, only a fraction of what has been excavated. They are still excavating and finding more things there to this day. The saga of Mesa Verde begins around 600 AD, when agricultural communities, known as basket makers, started settling in the areas, showcasing exceptional basket weaving skills. This initial phase lacked pottery, permanent dwellings, and the use of the bow and arrow. The subsequent growth period between 400 and 700 AD witnessed the emergence of modified basket makers. Pottery and roofed dwellings marked this transition, evolving into compact villages or pueblos around 750 AD. These compact clusters, featuring varied wall constructions, paved the way for communal spaces like kivas. In the climactic Classic Pueblo period, which is thought to be around 1100 to 1300 AD, Mesa Verde witnessed a shift as some ancient Puebloan Indians migrated to alcoves and canyon walls, leaving the mesa tops behind. This point reaches its zenith as a flourishing Puebloan culture, creating a striking tapestry of cliff dwellings that define Mesa Verde's unique identity. However, the echoes of prosperity were disrupted in 1276 AD when again a severe drought struck the region, persisting for 23 years. Springs dried up and the people faced a perilous situation. Forced to seek regions with more reliable water sources, they abandoned village after village, leaving the Mesa Verde area. The first mention of Mesa Verde dates back to 1859 with Captain J.N. Maccomb's exploration, but it wasn't until 1874 that William H. Jackson discovered the two-story cliff house. Other explorers followed, unveiling the treasures of Balcony House, Cliff Palace, Square Tower, and more. And just a side note, the thought of just exploring this country and finding something as incredible as Mesa Verde is one of the things that drives me to continue doing as much work as I do on this channel. I think there's still more to be found in this area. It's still being excavated, like I said earlier. We're still finding it, so you're able to volunteer for to help excavate some of these sites, and I think that's something that I'd like to do. So anyway, just a side note, I think it'd be awesome to, in this day and age, find something on our planet. So the preservation journey of Mesa Verde took shape slowly through proposals for a national park that emerged in the late 19th century. It wasn't until June 29th of 1906 that our favorite president, Theodore Roosevelt, favorite president for the national park system that we get to enjoy so much, he established Mesa Verde National Park, the first of its kind aimed at preserving the works of man. Today, the park's commitments to preserving both cultural and national resources remain steadfast. Visitors to Mesa Verde encounter a rich array of archaeological sites ranging from the 500s era pit house to the 1200s cliff dwellings. While the cliff dwellings steal the spotlight, the Mesa top pit houses and Puebloans are equally significant. To ensure maximum protection, strict regulations mandate that visitors can enter cliff dwellings only when accompanied by a park ranger. However, over 20 Mesa top sites and viewpoints offer self-guided exploration opportunities, and some of those are closed during winter. Mesa Verde is accessible. It's a 1 hour drive from Cortez or an hour and a half drive from Durango. It's right outside of a town called Mancos, Colorado, and Mesa Verde National Park welcomes visitors year-round. The park features a visitor center, a museum, guided and self-guided tours, hiking trails, a campground, and an immersive experience inviting all to unravel the mysteries and the wonders of the ancient Puebloan legacy. So Mesa Verde, when you drive in, it is on top of a mesa, even the campground. So once you enter the park, it is a straight drive up, winding and winding and winding until you get to the very top, and you can see everywhere. From certain parts of Mesa Verde, you can see into New Mexico from the top. So you can see vast miles. You can see miles on top of some of these outposts. There's actually an outpost at the very top that is supposed to be for bad weather. During bad weather seasons, there's a ranger who lives up there and sees, I think it's at 9,000 feet, pretty high. And there's also other mountains that you can see from there. It is a 100% must-see if you are interested in Southwestern culture, if you're interested in Native culture. This is the must-see of all these. They're all fantastic. They're all something that you should strive to see in your lifetime. But Mesa Verde is the pinnacle. It is the top of the top, cream of the crop site to see if you're interested in this type of history, which if you listen to this channel, you are. But if you have a chance, you can camp there. They have like bunk houses there, showers. There are rangers that give like nightly history lessons at these amphitheaters. There's hikes to see the main house. You can drive around this big loop and see there's little like outposts for you to see across the canyon where other families would live in the canyon. You can see their houses. There are wild horses that got loose 100 years ago, maybe longer, that the park system have not figured out how to get out fast enough before they breed. Last time I went, they are just wild horses they call them feral horses. I'm going to call them wild horses. They just run wild and live on top of the mesas. It's fantastic. And there's hikes to see petroglyphs where they think the Puebloan people wrote what they think is how the world was formed. You can literally go up and almost touch it. It's a little more intensive hike, but it's there for you to see. So please support our park system. Please support the continuing excavation of the culture that helps shape not only the area that it's in, but help shape the country. We owe that to the tribes there. So go support it. Go see it with your own eyes. It's a must. Mesa Verde is a must-see spot if you're interested in this history. While the label Last Comanche may seem somewhat exaggerated, it does serve as a symbolic representation rather than like a literal meaning. It acknowledges the ongoing presence of the Comanche people who thrive within a vibrant community in Oklahoma. The choice of this title aims to capture like the essence and the transformation within the Comanche nation, marking the conclusion of an era defined by their warrior culture. Quanah Parker stands out as the most renowned figure in Comanche history, facing formidable challenges to ensure the safety of his people. Despite not holding the formal title of head chief, he is widely recognized as the ultimate leader of the Comanche. The pivotal Red River War, as discussed in one of our previous videos, it marked a significant turning point for the Comanche people. In the aftermath, Quanah Parker assumed the weighty responsibility of surrendering his nation to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Quanah Parker was actually born into the Noconi band, or the Wanderers, under the Comanche umbrella. He was then spent his formative years with the Quahandes, where his parents, notable parents, Quahande Comanche chief Pete Nocona, and his mother, Cynthia Ann Parker, which was actually a white settler who was abducted at the age of 8 that kind of assimilated into the tribe. Before we go further into Quanah's life, we need to kind of touch on Cynthia Ann Parker because she's pretty pivotal, and maybe that's why Quanah Parker made the decisions he made in his later life. So Cynthia Ann Parker was born around 1827 and belonged to prominent Parker frontier family that settled in East Texas in the 1830s. In a dramatic turn of events, she was captured by the Comanches at the age of 8 or 9 during the raid on Fort Parker, which is in present-day Groesbeck, Texas, in 1836. Bestowed with the Comanche name Nadao, meaning foundling for you Mandalorian fans, the foundlings, she was embraced by the Noconi band of Comanches, and she became the foster daughter of Tabinoka, which is a chief there. Fully assimilating into Comanche life, Cynthia Ann Parker married Pete Nocona, the Quahande warrior chief, known as a bunch of different names, but the main name is Pete Nocona. Quanah Parker, their firstborn, entered the world in Wichita Mountains of southwestern Oklahoma around 1850, according to his letter to rancher Charles Goodnight. Alternative sources suggested his birthplace as Laguna Sabinas or Cedar Lake in Gaines County, Texas. So Cynthia Ann Parker and Pete Nocona also had 2 more children, Pecos, or they called him Pecan, and Topsana, or Prairie Flower. The family faced tumultuous events in December of 1860, when Cynthia Ann Parker and Topsana were captured in the Battle of Peace River. Conflicting accounts arose regarding Pete Nocona's fate, with some asserting he was wounded and killed, while others, including Quanah Parker, actually dispute this narrative. Subsequently, Cynthia Ann Parker, Quanah Parker's mother, and her infant daughter were taken against their will by the Texas Rangers. After 24 years with the Comanche, Cynthia Ann Parker resisted reassimilation, and her daughter Topsana tragically succumbed to illness in 1863. Struggling with her changed circumstances, Cynthia Ann Parker starved herself to death, so she committed suicide. YouTube doesn't like that word, but we're going to use it for historical references. She committed suicide by starving herself to death in March of 1871. So after the death of Pete Nocona, we think around 1864, with a man named Parakum, or Bull Bear, assuming leadership as the head chief of the Quahande people, and Horseback leading the Coney people, Quanah Parker and his brother Pecos found guidance under Horseback's mentorship. Building on the teachings of Pete Nocona and Iron Jacket, horseback imparted the traditions of the Comanche warrior upon them, and Quanah Parker rose to prominence as a formidable warrior. Departing briefly, he later rejoined the Quahandi band alongside warriors from another group. In October of 1867, a young Quanah Parker participated as an observer in treaty negotiations at Medicine Lodge, Kansas, accompanying the Comanche chiefs. Horseback notably spoke about Quanah Parker's refusal to sign the treaty during these negotiations. As the 1870s dawned, the Plains Indians faced mounting challenges in their struggles against the U.S. government for their land. The capture of Kiowa Chief Sitting Bear, Big Tree, and Santana marked a turning point in the Kiowa, Comanche, and Southern Cheyenne tribes joined forces in response. Colonel Ronald McKenzie, who we've talked about in a previous video, played a key role in rounding up and confronting Indians who had not settled on reservations. They're trying to find them and put them someplace where they didn't have to deal with them on the open plains. In 1873, Asatai, I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, from one of our previous videos, but Asatai, who was a self-proclaimed Comanche medicine man, called for a gathering of all Comanche bands for a Sundance, a Kiowa ritual not typical among the Comanche. At the gathering near the Red River, Asatai and Quanah Parker recruited warriors for retaliatory raids into Texas from Oklahoma. However, some Comanche chiefs, including Isa Rosa, which was named White Wolf, and a man named Sound of the Sunrise, awesome name, recognized the real threat posed by buffalo hide merchants to their way of life. Suggesting an alternative target, these chiefs proposed focusing on the merchants rather than engaging in raids. A war party influenced by Aisatai's claim of protective medicine headed towards the trading post of Adobe Walls. I keep referencing it, but we've talked about the Comanche before. I have a whole video on the Adobe Walls. We're going to touch on it briefly, but there's an intricate video about the importance of the Adobe Walls battle in super North Texas. So, the attempted raid on Adobe Walls, marked by the resilience of the saloon keeper and merchants armed with 50 caliber Sharps rifles, way outpowered what the Comanche had, resulted in a decisive turning point. Quanah Parker, leading the charge, faced adversary as his horse was shot from underneath him, and he himself sustained a non-fatal injury. The attack triggered a shift in Washington's policy, leading to the Red River War, culminating in the Battle of Palo Duro Canyon on September 28th of 1874. Mackenzie, our old friend Mackenzie, we touched on briefly in his Tonkawa Scouts, who are actually found a lot more in central Texas where I am, and kind of allied with the Americans to scout specifically against the Comanche. We're going to do a video just on the Tonkawa. So the Tonkawa Scouts dismantled along with the U.S. forces, dismantled the Comanche village at Palo Duro, dealing a significant blow and destroying nearly all of the Comanche horses, which was their source of wealth and power. It's about 1,500 horses died during this. That's a lot. The Comanche ultimately kind of surrendering in 1875. So, collaborating with Colonel Mackenzie and Indian agent James M. Hayworth, Quanah Parker played a pivotal role in the resettlement of the Comanche onto the Kiowa Comanche Apache Reservation in southwestern Indian Territory, which is now Oklahoma. So let's move on a little bit towards Quanah Parker's life after his warrior. So we know he's famous before that, but he gets really important going further. He does a lot for the Comanche. Some of it is people think is a good thing. Some of them think he's just a complete sellout, but we're here to just report on that. So they put Quanah Parker into the reservation. They built him a massive house. It's still standing. It's called the Star House in Cache, Oklahoma, and that was his residence. I'll show pictures of it, but it is like a traditional house with heat and stars literally on the roof, and big beams, front porches. So he started drawing a lot of attention from other tribe members and also very important people in America, specifically one of the most famous presidents of the time and maybe ever in the United States, President Theodore Roosevelt. Quanah Parker would engage in hunting excursions with Roosevelt, forging a unique connection between them. Despite such associations, he diverged from mainstream norms. He did not believe in monogamy or the traditional Protestant church But instead, Quanah Parker embraced the tenets of the Native American church movement, standing as one of its founding members. So the choice reflected his commitment to preserving and advancing the spiritual heritage of his people. So accepting that their way of life has come to an end, but we're not going to give up on everything. We're gonna push forward and change a couple things, but keep on to our own traditions. So with Quanah Parker being credited as one of the early leaders of the Native American church movement, his main addition to that was the introduction of the peyote religion, with the psychedelic drug that you see in the peace pipes, into the Native American church movement. So this followed after he had a near fatal encounter with a bull in Texas, pretty Texas of him to almost be killed by a bull, where he sustained pretty severe wounds. Seeking healing, a Mexican curandera prepared a potent peyote tea, say that 3 times, prepared a potent peyote tea, sparking Quanah Parker's involvement with the peyote religion. He was taught that peyote was a sacred medicine, used with water during Native American church ceremonies. So Quanah Parker endorsed the half-moon style of the peyote ceremony, distinct from the later cross ceremony influenced by Caddo practices introduced by John Wilson. Quanah Parker has a really cool quote about this. So one of the main things he talked about, the difference between the white man's church and Indian church, is he would say, quote, "The white man goes into his church house and talks about Jesus, but the Indian goes into his teepee and talks to Jesus." I think that's a pretty incredible quote. So the modern reservation era in Native American history owes much of the adoption of the church and Christianity is spearheaded by Quanah Parker and a man named John Wilson, which we talked about for a second there. Although not part of a traditional Native American religious practices, this movement gained prominence in the late 19th century, blending cultures from both Native Americans of Mexico and other southern tribes with ancient use of peyote in spiritual practices. So Quanah Parker advocated for the mindful use. Let's circle back on that. The mindful use, not just smoking peyote all day, but using it, the mind-altering substances, for ritual purposes. So while Quanah Parker, as we said before, he earned praise for cultural guardianship amongst many tribes, he is not immune to criticism, particularly from some Comanche quarters. Detractors argued that he had sold out to the white man, which I can see that. We fight to the end, and I mean, they did get kind of whipped in adobe walls, but they did surrender, and he adapted his life to like a traditional rancher's lifestyle. Critics pointed to his dressing and his living style, which some perceived as more like European American than traditional Comanche. A man named Paul Schatz Smith framed the debate as the basic Comanche political question, is questioning whether Quanah Parker is a sellout or a patriot. But he did embrace European American customs, but he did also maintain his identity by consistently wearing his hair long and in braids. It's like every single picture we have shown is him in his braids, which are so awesome looking. And he still resisted the conformity of U.S. marriage laws. He had up to 8 wives at the same time, so he was not going to get rid of that part of his culture. So let's move on to how we know some of this stuff and his life aside from the church. So we can see correspondence between Quanah Parker and a man named Samuel Birch Burnett Sr., and his son Thomas Lloyd Burnett reveal mutual admiration and respect. See, while historical records provide limited information about Quanah Parker until his involvement in the attack on buffalo hunters at Adobe Walls, there's only like fragmented details with his interaction with Apache, and that could lead to how he discovered the peyote religion, kind of dipping his toes into that and taking the adoption of the Native American church. Quanah Parker's involvement kind of evolved on tribal lands, opening for Anglo ranching interests. It led to close relations with Texas cattlemen, including the Burnett family, which we just talked about. So he said, if we're going to be put on this reservation, we're going to make some money on it because it's not going to be really given to us. We can see that now. It's penance. So by 1884, Quanah Parker's efforts facilitated the tribe's first grass payments for grazing rights, strengthening the bonds between him and his friends, the Burnetts. Burnett, with a genuine respect for Native American rights, learned and embraced Comanche ways, passing his appreciation and friendship to his family. The Comanches bestowed upon him the name, and I'm going to try to pronounce it, Massasoit, meaning big boss, pretty cool name, reflecting their regard for Burnett. Quanah Parker's adaptation to the white man's life led to prosperity as a rancher, and you can, like I said, you can still see Star House to this day. It is was part of an amusement park, kind of moved to somebody's actual property. There's been a lot of movement for people to take that, have that moved to like a place where it can be preserved. Right now, they can't get through to the owner for them to let go of Star House. It is owned on somebody's property. You can drive by it. It's in pretty bad disrepair. But if you read the most recent book about Quanah Parker's life, and it just escapes me at this second, but they kind of go into some detail about it. So, over the next 27 years, Quanah Parker and the Burnetts shared numerous experiences, including their involvement in public events and discussions with Theodore Roosevelt, like we talked about earlier. Burnett's assistance in significant manners, such as Quanah Parker's request to retain tribal ownership of lands and the relocation of his mother and sister's remains, further solidified their enduring friendship. So in 1872, Quanah Parker, according to his son Baldwin Parker, who actually filmed in was an actor in some silent films, which is kind of wild that we're not that far removed from Quanah Parker and the Wild West. Baldwin Parker said that Quanah entered matrimony with 2 wives. His first, Tahoe hailed from the Mescalero Apache tribe, the daughter of their chief Old Wolf. Acquiring her for 5 mules, doesn't seem like that much. Their union only lasted a year as Tahoe struggled with the Comanche language. Upon her request to return home, Quanah Parker sent her back to her people. His second wife in 1872, Wekia, was the daughter of Yellow Bear, a Penatica Comanche sub-chief. Despite initial complications, including her engagement to another warrior, some Comanche drama for you, she and Quanah Parker eloped, later reconciling with Yellow Bear. The amalgamation of their 2 bands formed the largest force of Comanche Indians. Quanah Parker eventually took 6 more wives, and their names I'm going to try to pronounce: Shoni, Macheta Wookie, Wutham Takum, Kobe, Tope, and Tanarsi. A photograph from the 1890s captured by William B. Ellis showcased Quanah Parker and 2 of his wives, identified as Tope and Shoni. In addition, Quanah Parker had a total of 8 wives and 25 children, and he adopted some of them. On the day that Quanah Parker took his last breath, his wives and children quietly mourned his departure, marking the occasion with 2 distinct ceremonies. An article published on March 29th of 1911 in Leavenworth Times of Leavenworth, Kansas, detailed the first ceremony, which was a tribal ritual. As the sun rose in the day following Quanah's passing, Marcus Poco, a chief medicine man and preacher for the tribe, led the observance. Marcus Polo believed that to have Mexican and Comanche roots. He donned a buckskin suit adorned with a buckskin bag containing the chief's cherished feathers, trinkets, and jewelry, including a diamond brooch presented by his cattlemen friends. Commencing their observance, Marcus Poco praised the chief and invoked the Great Spirit to welcome him. Subsequently, the funeral procession proceeded to the location for the second ceremony held at the Post Oak Mission Cemetery. The second ceremony unfolded at 3 p.m. And was overseen by Reverend A.J. Becker, a local Mennonite missionary. Reverend Becker and his wife, Magdalena, had dedicated themselves to missionary work among the Comanche since the establishment of the Post Oak Mission around a decade prior. Following the sermon, attendees joined in singing the Swan Dirge, and then the chief was laid to rest near the resting place of his mother, Cynthia, where, remember, they got her remains moved. Reverend and Mrs. Becker continued their service at the mission until the minister's retirement in 1941, forming close bands with the Comanche people and who affectionately gave them nicknames. In his book, The Last Comanche Chief, author Bill Neely reflects on Quanah and Cynthia, stating, quote, "Separated in life, they were united in death." In 1957, a significant expansion of Fort Sill led to the reburial of Cynthia and Quanah at the Fort Sill Post Cemetery in Lawton, which you can actually go see today. we have covered unknown outlaws, famous lawmen, weird weapons, and other subjects relating to the American Wild West. But it's time to take a dive into the heartbeat of the Old West. On this episode, we'll be taking a look into the weapons that won the Wild West, Part 1. The Colt Patterson Revolver. Also known as the Texas Colt, the Colt Patterson Revolver was the first practical revolving cylinder handgun made. This .36 caliber revolver was invented by Samuel Colt in 1831 and was patented in 1836. Texas served as kind of the proving ground for this revolutionary firearm. In 1839, the Republic of Texas ordered 180 of these revolvers for the Texas Navy, but it really solidified its name into Texas lore because it was the revolver issued to the early Texas Rangers. Most of you Wild West fans would know this, but the Texas Rangers were kind of a frontier force in the early years and were used to fight Native Americans who could fire multiple arrows in the same time it would take a single-shot pistol to be reloaded. This new Colt revolver gave them the edge they needed to defend themselves against Native American raids and put the native population on the defensive. The specific model used by the Texas Rangers is called the holster model, and it came with a 9-inch barrel. This Texas Colt was used by the Texas military during the Seminole Wars, the Texas Indian Wars, the Mexican-American War, and later models were used by the Confederacy during the American Civil War. This revolver weighed almost 3 pounds, and they were known to be both 28 and 36 caliber. This single-action revolver had a 5-round cylinder and had a muzzle velocity of 900 feet per second. The Texas Colt was super effective at around 65 yards. But there were some weird things about this firearm, mainly the trigger. See, the trigger would only extend out when the hammer was cocked back and ready to fire. There were a lot of instances where the trigger would get jammed, and in its retracted state, you'd be unable to fire. This made the gun pretty useless in battle when this happened. The other problem with the firearm is that it was considered underpowered. Some would even say that the wounds it inflicted weren't enough to take the enemy combatant out. Even with these problems, Texas Ranger Captain Jack Hayes and Samuel Walker were huge advocates of the continued use and improvement of the Texas Colt. It was extremely important in the Battle of Bandelier Pass. Each Texas Ranger was equipped with 2 Texas Colts. This gave them 10 shots to use instead of the 5s that their combatants got. It is pretty easy to say that the Colt Patterson rifle is one of the most important pieces of our Wild West puzzle. The Model 1841, the Mississippi Rifle. The famous Mississippi Rifle was the first standard U.S. military rifle to use a percussion lock system. This system provided much more reliability than the previous flintlock systems because of their ability to hold up in various weather events. First produced by Harper's Ferry Armory, famous jumping off point for the Civil War, and also known as United States Armory and Arsenal at Harper's Ferry, this rifle became instrumental during the Seminole Wars, the Mexican-American Wars, and even into the Civil War. The original Mississippi rifle was a .54 caliber using 1.66 rifling. By 1855, the rifle was changed to a .58 caliber so that they can implement the mini ball ammunition that had become the standard of the time. The original rifle wasn't set up to have a bayonet, but the appropriate changes were made by 1855 to have that a part of the rifle design. So, how did the rifle earn its distinct nickname? It actually originated from the Mexican-American War when Jefferson Davis, the future president of the Confederacy, was appointed colonel of the Mississippi Rifles, a volunteer regiment from, you guessed it, Mississippi. Davis pushed for wide use of the rifle, while his opponent, General Winfield Scott, said that the rifles were insufficiently tested and refused to put these rifles out en masse. The Model 1841 evolved into the Springfield Model 1855, which became the standard issue weapon for the regular Army infantry. It evolved again into the Springfield Model 1861 and Model 1863. The American Civil War saw the Mississippi rifle fade into the background. It was generally considered old-fashioned, but still effective. Union troops carried it until 1863, and the 45th New York Infantry used the rifle beyond Gettysburg. Some sharpshooters from the Confederacy used the rifle until the end of the Civil War. The Winchester Model 1887 lever-action shotgun. Originally designed by the famous American firearms designer John Browning, this innovative firearm was produced by the Winchester Repeating Arms Company during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The Model 1887 is considered one of the first successful repeating shotguns, using the famous lever-action design that the Winchester Repeating Arms Company was known for. John Browning actually suggested that the shotgun be a pump action, but Winchester and their management said for brand recognition, their firearms would be lever action. The shotgun shells at the time used black powder as a propellant, and the Model 1887 was designed in both 10 and 12 gauge models. We see serious use of this firearm on the Wild West frontier. Famous Arizona Sheriff John Slaughter considered this to be his favorite gun for clearing out the Arizona Territory. Along with his Winchester repeating shotgun, he helped track the famous Apache chief Geronimo and arrested or killed Wild West outlaws and the famous Jack Taylor gang. Lawman Jeff Milton used his 10-gauge 1887 Winchester shotgun to kill the famous three-fingered Jack Dunlop during an attempted holdup of the Southern Pacific Railway in the Arizona Territory. The repeating shotgun was also known as an exceptional defensive firearm. It was heavily used by railroad messengers on the Denver to Rio Grande railroads during the time of the intense bandit action and robberies. The Winchester Model 1887 was also considered an incredible hunting shotgun that was used to hunt everything from fowl to buffalo. The 1887 shotgun would sell over 64,000 before the Model 1899 was put into production. This style of shotgun was also seen in the incredibly popular movie, we've probably all seen it, Terminator 2. The Sharps Rifle. The Sharps rifle was designed by Christian Sharps in 1848 and was produced until 1881. This rifle was infamous for its long-range accuracy. The Sharps rifle became iconic not only during its time in service, but its appearance in the Western film and book genres. The action is a falling block and could shoot 8 to 10 shots per minute. It was used in the Civil War by multiple Union units, but the most famous is by the U.S. Army marksmen known as Verde sharpshooters. Not sure how that's pronounced. Sorry if you're from the area, this Texas accent says Burdens. The Sharps rifle was a superior sniper rifle and had much greater accuracy than the common muzzle-loading muskets. With its higher rate of fire, breech-loading mechanism, and superior quality, it could be used and reloaded with ease, even from kneeling or prone positions. The one problem officers had with the weapons is that it would actually encourage men to waste ammunition. The Sharps was fairly expensive compared to the muzzle-loading Springfield rifle. To be precise, it's 3 times the cost of the Springfield. Only 11,000 Model 1859s are produced, but most of them were given to sharpshooters. Here's something interesting I found in my research. I did not know this. After the Civil War, the Sharps became extremely popular in commercial buffalo hunters and frontiersmen. These large bore rifles were manufactured with some of the most powerful black powder cartridges ever made. Although this rifle became dated tech in 1881, there's still a fairly large following to this day. With the help of movies like Quigley Down Under, Valdez is Coming, and Billy Two Hats, an annual Sharps rifle match is held in Forsyth, Montana. Known as the Matthew Quigley Buffalo Rifle Match, weird name, shooters are tasked with hitting a target at 1,000 yards, which is 910 meters. This shooting match has been billed as the biggest rifle event in eastern Montana since the Custer Massacre. It has evolved into a 2-day competition with 8 shots for the score on 6 steel silhouette targets at ranges. Pioneering was all about being self-sufficient, creative, and making the most of what was available. While most of us aspired to be self-reliant, few could match the resourcefulness and resilience of the pioneers who survived out of sheer necessity. There's much we can learn from their ingenuity and in their way to adapt to challenges. Early pioneers likely had limited cooking utensils, often using cast iron skillets that added significant weight to their already burdened wagons. When faced with difficult terrain, they often had to unload non-essential items, including cooking equipment. Consequently, women had to improvise ways to cook without traditional vessels or ovens. This is where the ash cake likely originated, a clever solution to still enjoy a form of cake under challenging circumstances. Ash cake was essentially a type of pioneer bread made from cornmeal, a bit of water, and a pinch of salt, formed into patties and cooked on hot ashes from an open campfire. The ashes would adhere to and cook the dough, resulting in a hearty bread. As pioneers settled and constructed cabins, they might have also cooked their batter in open hearths. Few would have had the luxury of cast iron ovens until later in history, and if available, berries, dried fruit, molasses, or honey might have been added for flavor. It's conceivable that cowboys on frontier cattle drives also made similar bread to accompany their staple beans and rice. Similarly, Native American tribes that cultivated corn likely had this variation of ash cake bread. Much of this culinary history has faded into obscurity, but it's clear that many recipes and methods were born out of necessity using all available ingredients. Here's a quick recipe to make an ash cake. 1 cup stone ground cornmeal, that can be white or yellow, a pinch of salt, and half a cup of water, or enough to make the thick dough-like batter. Directions are to mix all the ingredients to form a thick dough, shape the dough into patties, and place the patties onto hot ashes, turning if necessary, or until they're cooked through. The next on our list is something called the carnivore bar. Now, this has a name that's well known to Native Americans and cowboys alike, but the carnivore boar has a rich history rooted in the evolution of a traditional food known as pemmican. Both traditional and modern animal-based eaters have benefited from the nutrient-dense, travel-friendly food thanks to its unique recipe. So, to understand its significance in history and its relevance today, let's explore the origins of pemmican, the original North American survival food. So what is it? Pemmican is a traditional Native American food made from tallow, like from bison or wild game, dried meat, and sometimes wild berries. It was a staple food during nomadic travel, commonly used by Native American tribes across the United States and Canada while following the bison herds. Pemmican originated from the plains of the Americas, where Native Americans coexisted with those bison herds, and although bison served as the primary source of meat for making pemmican, it was a vital food for survival during the nomadic journeys. The word pemmican derives from the Cree word pemmican, so it's spelled different, but it's kind of the same, meaning manufactured grease. Native American tribes relied heavily on bison, especially during harsh winters, and pemmican was a convenient and nutritious way to preserve meat for extended periods. This high-calorie, nutrient-dense food sustained nomadic tribes during their travels. Pemmican played a crucial role in the fur trade era, facilitating explorations and trade across North America. Pioneers and fur traders, including Peter Pond and Sir Alexander Mackenzie, recognized this value during their expeditions. In the 1920s, Arctic explorers observed the health benefits of the Inuit diet, so what we sometimes refer to them as Eskimos, Alaska's native population, the Inuits, and they included pemmican as well. And these explorers advocated for pemmican as a high-energy, nutrient-dense food, although it wasn't adopted by the military due to other influences. Pemmican typically consists of lean, dried bison meat with bison fat and added salt and berries depending on availability and preference. The meat was dried and pulverized while the fat was rendered into tallow. These ingredients were mixed and packed into bison hide bags, preserving the food for long periods of time. The benefits of pemmican include the ability to preserve nutrition, making it suitable for long-term storage, its convenience as a travel food, and its simplicity as a 2-ingredient recipe, providing complete nutrition. So just a quick recipe for pemmican. It's still made today. You can buy it. I think you can buy it on Amazon. The ingredients for something, just a basic recipe for pemmican, is 4 cups lean dried meat, so deer, beef, caribou, or moose, or bison, 3 cups dried fruit, 2 cups rendered fat, and unsalted nuts, and about 1 shot of honey. So the instructions are the meat should be as lean as possible and double ground from your butcher if you don't have your own meat grinder. Spread it very thin on a cookie sheet and dry at 180 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 8 hours, or until sinewy and crisp. Pound the meat into a nearly powdered consistency using a blender or other tools. Grind the dried fruit, but leave a little bit of lump for fun and texture. Heat rendered fat on stove at medium until liquid, and add liquid fat to dried meat and dried fruit. Mix in the nuts and honey, mix everything by hand, let it cool and store, and that can be consumed and kept for several years according to the recipe. Now we move into the heart of the rugged West, where the land stretches wide and the spirits of adventure run deep. There exists a dish that speaks of frontier boldness and resilience, and we give it a little flavor text because we're talking about Rocky Mountain oysters. Born from the necessity of ranching life, where every part of the animal was honored and utilized, Rocky Mountain oysters emerged as a testament to the resourcefulness of the Western pioneers. These pioneers, carving a life out of the untamed frontier, knew the value of making do with what they had. In the homestead kitchens and bustling campfires, bull testicles transformed into a savory delicacy. Skinned, coated in flour, pepper and salt, and then crisped to perfection in bubbling oil, these oysters became a staple of cowboy cuisine. But it wasn't just on the ranches that Rocky Mountain oysters found their place. Across the wide plains and dusty trails from the rolling hills of Canada to the sun-drenched lands of Texas and Oklahoma, these culinary treasures made their mark. In the bustling towns and rowdy saloons of the Wild West, Rocky Mountain oysters became a symbol of frontier grit and camaraderie. Festivals sprung up celebrating the rugged spirit of the West, with feasts centered around this unique dish. From Eagle, Idaho, boasting the world's largest Rocky Mountain oyster feed, to small towns like Clinton, Montana, and Severance, Colorado, where testicle festivals, it's kind of weird to say and kind of makes me laugh, testicle festivals become beloved traditions. Rocky Mountain oysters brought people together in celebration of Western heritage. Yet, beyond the laughter and camaraderie, Rocky Mountain oysters held a deeper significance. They spoke of a time when survival depended on ingenuity and adaptability, when the spirit of the West was forged in fires of hardship and adventure. Today, as the sun sets over the wide open plains and the legacy of the frontier lives on, Rocky Mountain oysters continue to be enjoyed. Whether served in a rustic ranch kitchen and amid the cheers of a bustling festival, these culinary delights carry within the spirit of the West. A spirit as bold as the land itself, and probably as bold as eating Rocky Mountain oysters. So if you have any interest in eating them, I haven't, but I had found a quick recipe for it. The ingredients to make some Rocky Mountain oysters is 2 pounds of calf testicles, not bull testicles, even though I said that earlier. Now they cook them with calf testicles because they're more tender. 2 cups of beer, 2 eggs beaten, 1.5 cups of AP flour, a 1/4 cup of yellow cornmeal, salt and pepper to taste, a tablespoon of hot sauce, and some vegetable oil. Speaking of resourcefulness and using what you have, that brings us to our first dessert on this list. Something that I've never heard of, even though I'm from the South, and it's something called vinegar pie. Now, folks nowadays might raise an eyebrow at such of a thought of this kind of pie, but our pioneer ancestors held it dear to their hearts. They knew how to make do with what they had, and when lemons, limes, and other citrus fruits were a rare luxury, they turned to apple cider vinegar to give their pies that tangy kick. You see, back in those days, a lemon or an orange was a treasure, like beyond compare. The scarcity of such fruits meant that pioneer women had to get creative in the kitchen. And so, the first vinegar pie recipes were born, substituting the sharpness of citrus with the acidity of vinegar. In logging and mining camps scattered across the rugged terrain, where meals were hearty and desserts were a rare delight, vinegar pie became a staple on the cook shack tables. The loggers and miners savored its sweet and tart flavors, especially when topped with a cloud of delicate meringue. Apple cider vinegar was more than just a cooking ingredient. It was a versatile staple in pioneer households. From cleaning wounds to flavoring recipes, it found its way into countless aspects of daily life, including the beloved vinegar pie. Now, making a vinegar pie the pioneer way was no small feat. Every step was a labor of love, from crafting the crust by hand to patiently waiting as it baked to perfection. But the satisfaction of slicing into that golden pie, knowing it was a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the pioneers. Of course, in today's hustle and bustle, not everyone has the time to channel their inner pioneer in the kitchen. But fear not, for there are a few shortcuts that you can make. Whether you opt for a store-bought crust or whip one up with the help of modern appliances, the essence of vinegar pie remains unchanged, a tribute, again like all these, to the spirit of the Old West. So, if you're feeling adventurous and want to taste a slice of history, give this vinegar pie recipe a try. Whether you take the easy route or embrace the pioneer way, one thing's for sure, the journey, which this will be a journey, to the first delectable bite will be worth it. The ingredients for a vinegar pie is a quarter cup of sifted AP flour, 1 cup of white sugar, 1 cup of water, 3 egg yolks, an 1/8 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of butter at room temp, 3 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, and then you would preheat the oven to 325, mix the flour, and I'll put the full recipe up on the screen so you can see if you want to try it yourself. Our last dish on the list, I made this one the last, not necessarily the first, but just the one we were going to end with. I made this because of the name. So we're all familiar with cowboy beans, cowboy stews, and just a pot of something being cooked out on the range. You know, that's what we think about when we read the stories and see the movies. This one's unique though. So, out on the rugged frontier, where cowboys roam the vast expanse of the open range, there's one dish that reigns supreme. That is son of a bitch stew. Legend has it that this hearty concoction was a favorite among cowboys, crafted from the finest cuts of a freshly slaughtered calf. Now, don't let the name fool you. When polite company was present, it was referred to as son of a gun stew. But when the coast was clear, its true moniker was proudly proclaimed. When a calf met its fate, every part of the animal was put to good use. The tongue, liver, heart, kidneys, sweetbreads, and brain were carefully collected and delivered to the cook, who knew exactly what to do. Armed with a trusty butcher knife, the cook chopped the ingredients into small pieces and let them simmer into an iron kettle. But here's the beauty of son of a bitch stew. There was no hard or fast rule. Every cook had their own recipe, tossing in potatoes, tomatoes, or whatever else happened to be on hand. The only rule is if you could identify all the ingredients, it wasn't a true cowboy stew. Alan Davidson's book, The Oxford Companion to Food, delves into the origins of this legendary dish. It's said that the key to this unforgettable taste lies in the peculiar ingredients known as the marrow gut, yum yum, and this tube-like organ found between two of the calf's stomachs was filled with a substance akin to like bone marrow, imparting a unique flavor to the stew. Now, cooking son of a bitch stew wasn't for the faint of heart. Some recipes call for simmering a medley of calf's head, liver, spine marrow, kidneys, sweetbread, tongue, and brains in a hearty broth, seasoned with wine and spices. The concoction would bubble away for hours, filling the air with an irresistible aroma. But despite its humble origins and colorful name, son of a bitch stew was more than just a meal. It's a piece of our history. From chuck wagon cooks to ranch hands, it warmed the bellies and lifted spirits of those who roamed the vast expanse of the American West. As the saying went, you throw everything in the pot but the hair, horns, and holler. And the longer it simmered over the fire, the better it became, transforming into a savory masterpiece that warmed the bellies and lifted the spirits. So, next time you hear tales of the Old West, remember the humble son of a bitch stew, a dish that embodied the true spirit of the frontier, and again, where the resourcefulness and ingenuity reigned supreme.